Hello, this is Chelsea from Fox Cities Quilt Company. Thank you for joining me today as I go over our first month in the Block of the Month Club for our Starry Night quilt. For this first month, we are going to make our manger scene along with our star and stable. Be sure to have all of your fabrics cut before you watch this video. I find that will help you understand exactly what I'm referring to. If you have everything cut, you'll want to make sure you have your reference guide, which are all included in your kit that you picked up or you will be picking up from the shop. This will be something that you're going to use every month along the way. So be sure to keep that nice and clean and handy, even putting it in a page protector. That might all be things that would benefit you in the long run. The first cut that I'm going to demonstrate for you using this Wonder Curve ruler is going to be the Shimmer A cut. Now, whenever you're using this ruler, you always want to make sure you are using it with the writing right side up. This will allow you to make sure you are always cutting the correct shapes, the correct directions. Now here on the Shimmer A, it tells me to line up that solid blue line on my ruler with the edges of my square. This will then give me a space to cut the curve. And here you can see I'm cutting nice and slow along the slit in my ruler. And this will give me that Shimmer A shape. You will want to follow along in your instructions because each of your fabrics might have a different cut. Then you will look at the reference guide and you will follow the instructions for that specific cut. So here, this was the Shimmer A. You will also see that you'll have to cut a twist C. Those are just different variations of how to line it up on your ruler. Everything is very straightforward. I always say measure twice, cut once. You definitely want to do that for this quilt. Another tip for you before you get started is to make sure you have a nice sharp blade on your rotary cutter. It is amazing how much of a difference a fresh blade will make, but trust me, as you can see right here, I did not follow my own rules, and I actually could have benefited from a fresh blade. So watch here as I make this cut and remove my ruler. You're going to see that I did not have a clean cut, and I actually had to realign my ruler and cut it all again, which ended up working just fine. But if you want to eliminate that extra step, be sure to always start your projects with a fresh blade and a fresh needle. Take your time making all of these cuts and just make sure you are double checking and making sure you are lining them up on whatever lines the directions are calling out for you. And you will have all these beautiful curves. Look how cute that is. Now, some of our shapes, we're actually going to start with a triangle. You're going to see here I cut a square as the directions ask for on the diagonal. Here we're going to line it up on the 5-inch mark. So you can see I found where that intersection of that 5-inch mark was, and I lined it up on my corner and I trimmed off these little peaks. Here, there we go. We're just going to cut them off, move along those peaks. Then we're going to grab our fabric. We are going to find these corners that we have, and I'm going to place them in these corners along the blue line. You're going to see how it just falls in there really nice. Because here we are making our concave line. So this is where our Shimmer A is going to fit into real nice. So you can see how it's kind of opposite of how you were working before. Excuse my hand there. So there we go. How easy was that? You can see how they just fit in there. Nice and snug. And now you are ready to sew. So here, when you sew, you're going to bring it over to your machine. You are going to line them up, and you're going to leave about 1/4 of an inch once you flip it. So you can see on the top portion, I have that Shimmer B side down, and I am just going to place them underneath my machine. And I'm going to go really slow, a couple stitches at a time. And I'm going to have my right hand working with that bottom fabric, and my left hand is going to work with that upper fabric. And what I'm going to do after a few stitches is I'm going to move my hands to kind of marry that inside curve edge along that 1/4 inch mark. So I'm just going to go really nice and slow, adjusting my fabric as I go. I made sure I placed my needle so it stayed down once I stopped. So that's what I was doing with my machine right there. And you can see how as I'm going, I'm just walking both of my hands kind of toward each other, marrying those edges along that 1/4 inch mark on my machine. I am using a walking foot. You probably will have just as good a luck with a 1/4 inch foot. And you're going to see it doesn't come to a perfect match at the end, but that's the nice thing about this is they thought about that and they gave us some wiggle room that we are going to trim and make sure we have those beautiful squares that we need to complete our blocks. So here I'm just going to go right to the end of where my 2 fabrics were, pull it out, trim it, and then we go and press it. Look how nice that is. But yeah, don't worry about those tails. We're going to get those nice and cleaned up. We're going to bring that over to our ironing board in just a second. Well, I guess I'm going to show you one more. So here again, you line them up kind of how you want it finished, and then you flip them so they're right sides together. Leave that 1/4 inch on that top half. And I eyeball it. If you have a little more or a little less, it should be fine. Actually, a little more would be better than a little less. And you'll see why when we start trimming. And here, insert underneath the foot, start stitching really nice and slow. Right hand on that bottom fabric, and that left hand is going to drive that top fabric. And you can just see how I'm moving it nice and slow, marrying that edge together on that 1/4 inch. This is not a race, trust me. You want to just take it nice and slow. And if I were you, I would just use some scrap fabrics and make a whole bunch of these and just practice. A little practice will go a long way, trust me. So you can see here, we're just going to sew it all the way right to the end, marrying those fabrics, a 1/4 inch seam. Going to give us those nice, beautiful curves. And if you need to stop, keep that needle down, pick up your presser foot, and just kind of realign it if you need to. Sometimes our fabrics like to go a little crazy. Put it back down and just go nice and slow, guiding it. Don't run over your fingers, please. Cut our threads and bring it over to our presser table. Look at how nice that is. Nice and beautiful. Now on our pressing table, you will not want to use steam for these projects. You don't want to, since we're working on the bias on those curves, you don't want to stretch out our fabric too much. So here I'm just running the iron along that curve. What I think it does is just kind of evens out where we're going to distribute all of that excess fabric. And I just like to do that, and then I run it slowly over it, okay? A nice even pressure. And then I flip it over and make that curve look nice and neat. And don't worry about those long tails, because I'm going to show you what to do with them right here. So here we're going to bring it back to our table, and we're going to follow our instructions to make this guy into our 4-inch square like we need. So you see these blue solid dots? Those I'm going to line up on my curve, and you're going to see the 4-inch square on my ruler. So if I follow along the 4-inch edge, you're going to see that it is in the fabric, okay? You want to make sure that there's fabric underneath that 4-inch mark all the way around. Otherwise, you're not going to have a perfect square. So once you have those blue lines lined up, double check that it's on the 4-inch square, and then make your first cut. Rotate it, line it up again. So you see those blue line dots are on the curve. Both of my blue solid dots are on the curve. And that bottom corner was on that 4-inch line. So now I'm just trimming off the excess, and I will have my perfect 4-inch square. Thank you for joining the Starry Night Black of the Month Club. See you next month.